Something dark and scary. This audio contains blood, gore, violence, and adult content. Viewer discretion is advised. A long time ago, a beast called Krampus came for the children who were naughty on days set before Christmas. It is said the devilish evil walked with hooves and has a tail. The beast also had horns on the top of its head. His eyes bulged out red and his tongue whips out his mouth as he smiled. He would take all the naughty children and do unspeakable things to them. The creature enjoys a good hunt, waiting for the right moment to indulge. The creature also would be hiding behind closed doors or in the woods, lurking around paths or hidden shadows for the right time to take what silly-minded naughty children he wanted. Krampus, they called him.
A little boy wakes up in the middle of the night, still upset for beating up his little brother over losing on a video game and getting grounded for it. He stands up, then starts crying. The time is 10:45 p.m. The kid balls his fist, then faces towards the window in his bedroom. The snow falls from the sky, leaving a thick white sheet covering the area. Icicles hang from tree limbs and branches, even some on houses nearby. The boy starts to wonder if he was getting any gifts this year. He did hit his brother. He did yell at his parents. He stole from the candy shop down the street 4 days ago. He picked on 2 girls at his school because they were heavy. He then thought to himself, if he didn't get a gift, he'd take it from his little brother and make all his little brother's presents his own. He smiled as he stood looking out at the snow. Soon, a thud sound came from the roof. The boy jumped back, looking up, wondering what it was. Whatever it was, it moved over to the side of the house where the boy's bedroom is. The boy backed away from the window. He fell, sitting on his bed, looking with anticipation. Long, bony, hairy fingers reached down over the top of his window. A head slowly came in view, peering into the boy's bedroom. Red eyes focused on the boy's eyes, as its tongue whipped out of its mouth with drool dripping from its lips, its head upside down as it faced the child. The boy's eyes widened as he stared in shock. He began urinating in his pajamas as he watched the hooved-footed nightmare leap down and started wedging its long fingernails into the windowsill. The nails burst through into the home, sending pieces of wood onto the floor of the bedroom. The creature then lifted up, forcing the locked window open. The boy got off his bed, then ran to his door. The creature got in and chuckled a sinister sound as it began to approach the frightened boy. The boy looked back as the hood-footed thing started towards him. He ran out the door, slamming it shut, then started calling out to his parents. As he ran down the hallway to his little brother's bedroom, he yelled in horror. The Krampus burst through his bedroom door, growling and smiling a devilish smile. The boy opened his brother's door, then ran inside, closing and locking it. He ran to his little brother, then started shaking him to wake him up. He grabbed his brother's arm, then the collar of his pajamas. He rocked his brother hard, trying to get him to wake up. With all his efforts, his brother stayed asleep. The boy let go of his brother, then hid under the bed. He waited, hoping that the demon-faced monster would leave. The sound of hooved steps left the door, running down the hallway. the boy cried, covering his mouth. He didn't know why his parents didn't wake up when he yelled or when he slammed his door. He was even more scared that he couldn't wake up his little brother. He sat under the bed for a half hour quietly trying not to move. He soon grown tired and his eyes got heavy. He knew he couldn't go to sleep because that thing might be waiting for him too. He looked around searching on the floor for anything he could use as a weapon. That's when he spotted it. 2 sets of hooves. But how? It didn't get in from the bedroom door or window. The hooves didn't move. The boy covered his mouth again. He cried and his face turned red. His hands trembled and he lost control of his bladder. Pee ran down the side of him as he tried his hardest to be quiet. The puddle moved from his legs, spreading out small streams heading out from under the bed. The boy's eyes followed the streams. Then he noticed the hooves were gone. He turned around quickly, then screamed in horror. The Krampus's face was right next to his. Its red eyes blinked, and it grabbed him up, snapping his little body from under the bed. The little brother woke up. He then looked around, staring at the shadows in his room. He then laid his head back down, then fell asleep. In the dark of his closet, 2 large red eyes blinked. Then the Krampus vanished, and the eerie feel of wickedness that foreshadowed all of the inhabitants faded. The Christmas lights on the tree downstairs flickered and blinked on and off. The gifts sat under the tree with the reflection of lights casting on them. The clock on the wall read 10:46 p.m. The Vanity family decided to spend Christmas in a cabin on their family's owned property. The 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom old cabin looked fancy inside with a fireplace, small kitchen, and living room.
Dad, it's too cold out.
Matt, the father, and his wife Peggy unloaded their SUV as their children Gwen, Robert, and Renee, and Robert's girlfriend Tricia looked around. Gwen, the 7-year-old, stayed close to the cabin with her baby doll in hands watching the snow fall. Her long dark hair blows in the wind. Her purple scarf is wrapped around her neck and mouth. Robert and his girlfriend run out in the woods throwing snowballs at one another.
Here it comes. Stop. God.
Renee sits on the front porch of the cabin on a wooden swing. She's texting back and forth with her friends on how lame it is to be spending the last 2 days of the week with her family before Christmas. She rolls her eyes at her mother as her mother waves at her with a big smile. Matt, the father, brings a few things up into the attic. He grins and places the bags on the floor. He then gets a text message from his co-worker under the name David Fisher, which is the name he put in his phone for the woman he's having an affair with. The text reads, "Hope things are well. Can't wait to go hunting again." Meaning, I miss you. I can't wait till we have sex again. Matt smiles, then rubs his front side, imagining the times he had with his blonde mistress. Renee goes over to help her mother finish unpacking the SUV. She gives her mother an unpleasant look to how angry she is about not spending her time with her friends. Her mother just smiles at her, then gives her a kiss on the cheek.
God, Mom.
Robert and Tricia stop in a clearing in the middle of the woods.
Let's make out here. It's freaking awesome. We have the light from up above and the scenery. It's
beautiful?
Yeah, that.
Robert takes off his heavy coat, then lays it on the ground. He then helps his girlfriend to sit on it. The two of them start kissing and rubbing one another.
Wait. What if someone sees us?
Trisha says, stopping Robert from undoing her bra.
Well, they can watch.
Robert says as he goes back to kissing her.
No.
What if it's like your family?
No one will see us. We are in the middle of the woods. We can do whatever we want here.
Trisha smiles at Robert, then Robert starts kissing her neck.
Do you have a rubber?
Jesus Christ, Trisha, do we have to be saints? I'll be careful.
Careful isn't good enough, Robert. I have a future, and it doesn't have kids in it until I'm in my 30s.
Quit being such a tease. You know you want to.
Robert grabs Trisha by the wrist, then starts kissing her and putting his tongue in her mouth. Trisha struggles to shove him off.
Robert, stop! You're hurting me.
Robert becomes furious, then starts pulling off Trisha's clothes. He ripped open her blouse and exposed her breasts. He then started kissing and sucking on them. Trisha decided she had to hit him. She punched him in the face, then he lit up and got off of her.
You fucking asshole!
Trisha says as she began putting her clothes back on.
Sorry, I was kidding. I wasn't going to do anything. It was a joke.
Robert says as he walks over to Trisha. Trisha shoves him away, then slaps him in the face.
Okay. I went too far. But you have to know I heard you gave it up to Kevin Riley and Pat London.
So you think I'm a slut?
No, not at all. I just didn't think you would act like this.
So, you think I'm easy?
Listen, let's just act like this didn't happen and just enjoy the rest of the time out here with my family. I don't want to ruin this.
You already have, Robert.
Trisha storms back to the cabin, buttoning up her coat. Robert puts his head down and kicks a pile of snow near his feet. Inside the cabin, Gwen goes into the room where she will share with Renee and Trisha. Only one bed is in the room. Matt walks in, pulling in sleeping bags. He lays them out on the floor, then pats Gwen on the head. I've told your big sister and Trisha that you're getting the bed, so don't worry about where you're sleeping.
I don't mind the sleeping bag, Dad.
It's okay, honey. I already told them you got the bed, so what is said is said. Get unpacked and we're going to build a snowman after we eat. Gwen smiled at her father, then ran over to the bed and jumped onto it. She plopped down and stared at the wood ceiling. Renee got off her phone, then walked over to her brother who she saw walking behind the cabin swinging a stick.
Hey, Bubblehead, I got some scary news.
Renee says as she approaches Robert. Robert turns to her and shrugs his shoulders, then turns back around, walking away.
Listen, that kid who stays across the street from us, you know, the one who is always arguing with his folks.
Robert glances over and sighs to his sister by nodding his head.
He is missing. My friend Amanda texted me that they found blood in his little brother's closet, and police are saying it's a kidnapping.
Oh, bullshit.
Amanda told me.
That kid is always pulling pranks on people. He's probably in over his head or some pedophile took him.
Wow, your mind always goes to dark places.
Blood? Missing kid? Maybe the boogeyman got him.
Could you just say he might have ran away?
No.
Robert faced his sister, then grinned at her.
It's probably nothing. Let's get this weird family time holiday in over with.
The mother cleaned the dirty dishes as the kids built 2 snowmans outside. Renee and her brother worked on one, while Matt and Gwen did one of their own. Trisha sat inside by the fireplace drinking hot cocoa. Outside, Robert found a thick piece of wood in the snow. He then picked it up, then jammed it into his snowman's lower region.
Look, Dad, my snowman has wood.
Gwen screamed and Renee laughed at the sight. Matt yelled at Robert to take it out, and Robert fell on the ground laughing hysterically. Matt pulled the stick out, then told his son to go inside. Robert got up from off the ground and knocked off the snow from his coat and clothes.
Fine, Dad. I was just having a little fun.
There are some things you don't do in front of people. Robert looked at Gwen, then apologized to her.
Sorry.
Then he left. Renee covered her mouth with muffled chuckles. She tried to stop when her dad gave her a mean look. Robert walked past Trisha as she sat in the living room. He went into his room, then slammed the door shut. Trisha stared over at Peggy.
Don't mind him. He's going through his little teenage emotions. You know how it is.
Peggy says to Trisha. Trisha stands up, then walks over to Peggy.
I'm sorry for coming. I know it's a family thing, but Robert kept insisting on me coming, saying you guys were okay with it.
Peggy dried out a pot as she kept glancing up at Trisha.
You know, my son is a bit ornery. He gets away with a lot, but it's only minor things. You're not one of them. I'm glad you came. You make my son happy, so that makes me happy.
Trisha looks into Peggy's green eyes. Trisha feels she needs to say more about her relationship with Robert, but she doesn't. An hour later, Gwen helped her mother decorate the Christmas tree. Then they baked cookies. Renee and Trisha put up the Christmas stockings, and when they were done, they sang along to holiday songs with Matt and Gwen. After Matt was done having his fun, the family played board games and told stories by the fire. When it got late, everyone went to sleep. 11:45 p.m. Matt slept in the living room on the couch, sitting up with his head laid back and his mouth open. Outside, the wind blows swiftly, and the sounds of the wild is heard. A shadow appears at the door of the cabin with horns shaped in it. Heavy breathing is heard. The creature dashes away quickly, leaving hooved prints in the snow. Trisha wakes up from the cold chill. She sits up out of her sleeping bag, crossing her arms. A cloud of smoke leaves her mouth. She is shaking badly and feeling a sore throat coming on. She coughed into her hands, then got up off the floor to wake Renee. Renee moaned for a second before opening her eyes. She then jumped up shaking from the cold air, then started walking back and forth, rubbing her arms.
Why is it so cold in here?
Renee asked Trisha.
I don't know. Maybe we need to be in the living room by the fireplace.
Trisha responded. Renee went over to wake her little sister. When she shook her, she wouldn't wake up. She pulled the blanket from off her body, then shook her shoulders. As she did, she noticed how warm Gwen is. She didn't look as cold as her and Trisha. Renee looked over at Trisha with an odd stare.
She's not even freezing like us. Fuck! She won't even wake the hell up.
Renee put the blanket back over Gwen's shoulders and face.
Let's go check on my folks.
The two girls came out the room, then noticed Matt on the floor by the fireplace tossing more wood in. Hey girls, cold too? Matt says, rubbing his hands.
Yeah, Dad. What the hell is going on?
Calm down, sweetheart. I'll get the cabin back to its heated temperature. Trisha and Renee went over by the fireplace and tried to get warmed up. Robert walked out his room, yawning, putting his coat on.
Dad, it's fucking cold in here.
Watch your mouth, Robert.
Did you bring us out here to freeze to death?
Robert, not now. Matt stood up, then grabbed his boots from the closet, then put on his coat. The girls sat by the fireplace, rubbing their hands and blowing into their palms. I'll be back. I'm going to get more wood. Robert, go check on your mother. Renee, your sister.
Gwen is fine, Dad. She's not even cold.
Renee says to her father, trying to connect to the internet with her cell phone. Go wake her up and get her in the living room. I need to know she's okay. Do it. Renee rolls her eyes at her father, then sighs miserably. She looks at Trisha, then she leaves the living room. Trisha went over to the closet, then pulled out her coat and scarf.
I'll go with you. I can help with the wood.
Matt stared away for a moment, then nodded at Trisha. The two left the cabin, stepping out into the cold night of December 24th. Robert opened the door to his mother's room, slowly peeking in. He then spotted his mother asleep, bundled up under 2 blankets and sheets. She looked sound asleep and warm. Robert walked over to his mother, then touched her arm. She was warmer than she looked. Robert backed away, then shook her shoulder a bit. His mother's eyes twitched a bit, and she yawned, then turned away from Robert.
Mom, wake up. It's cold and you're warm and something's going on. The room is cold and you're warm. Wake up! Wake up!
Robert shouts. His mother moves a bit, adjusting the covers over her, then stops after finding a comfortable position.
Mom?
Robert shoved his mother a few more times. The last shove was hard, making her body jolt forward. She stayed asleep and Robert began to get scared. Renee sat in the bed with Gwen in her lap, playing with her little sister's hair. Gwen was still asleep. Renee's hands were trembling as she held her sister. She took out her phone again and saw she had no connection. Matt and Trisha walked around the cabin to the side where he left stacks of chopped wood. He picked some up, then placed it in a small sled with 4 corners locked with chains. Trisha helped place the wood into the small sled. Matt felt weird all of a sudden. He dropped a log in the snow, then stood up straight, turning to his left side. The snow blew down heavy, and the air seemed to dry his skin at the same time as freezing him. He put one hand up over his eyebrows to block the snowflakes. Standing miles away facing them is a horned figure. Its red eyes glowed in the distance it stood. Matt let out a whimpering breath, lifting out his right hand to get Trisha's attention while she was focused on stacking the wood. Trisha saw Matt's hand and how he was looking out at the field before them. She stood up, then walked over beside him. Out in the field of snow, Krampus stood. From where he was, it looked like a tall human with horns. His sharp teeth showing as he runs his slithery tongue across them. Krampus stands at 6'9" with goat-like legs and hooves to match. Its brown tail wagged back and forth, and its brows narrowed down as his face scrunched into anger. A cloud of smoke came from his nostrils as they flared. It smiled as it pointed one long finger at the two of them standing before it. The snow fell on his wicked face and hands. Wearing a red and white thick coat dressed nearly in a Santa suit, it started moving forward. Matt looked at Trisha. "Get in the cabin now," Matt whispers to the frightened girl. Trisha slowly walked over to the cabin. The Krampus's red eyes followed her. Then it made an awful sound. Little Krampus lookalikes came running forth, all in gray furry coats, small with pointy ears and red eyes like Krampus. The little hell rejects stood at 4 feet. They all held self-made weapons, chains with spikes, bats with nails, gloves caked with glass, knives and loose chains, ropes, and sharp sticks. The small ones were all dark green with scaly skin and fur. One of the little wicked ones tightened up his spiked chain in his grips and growled. The Krampus then blew into a horn he took from his leather black belt. The little monsters came running down the hill screaming and growling. Matt picked up his axe, then ran to the cabin. He got inside, then slammed the door shut, locking it. The little monsters ran up to the cabin, then started stabbing the door, then climbing the walls. Robert came out his mother's room.
Mom won't wake up.
Trisha ran to Robert, then started telling him about the horned demon they saw outside. Robert didn't believe her. He kept trying to get his father's attention. Matt moved the couch over to the front door. Then he moved a large antique chest over to help block the door. Trisha ran into the kitchen searching for a knife.
Dad, Mom won't wake up.
Robert says to his father, following him down into the basement of the cabin. The basement was even colder than the upstairs. It is filled with crates and boxes. Matt told Robert not to worry about his mother and to help him. Robert started to cry as he helped his father. The two of them moved out a large black box with a lock on it. Matt told his son to back up, and he used the axe to open the box. He chopped open the front of the box, knocking off the lock. The lid flipped open, and inside are stacks of rifles with bullets.
Dad, what's happening?
Son, whatever your little girlfriend told you when she got in is the truth. We're all in danger. I need you to take this rifle and protect our family. I showed you how to shoot before, remember?
Yes, Dad, but what's going on?
I don't know. We have to act fast. One of the small creatures fell down the chimney into the fireplace. Trisha screamed, backing into a wall. The little creature ran out in a blaze, screaming and clawing at her. Trisha dodged it, jumping on top of a love seat, then to a stool. The monster followed her while it burned, pulling out 2 sets of knives made out of human bones. Trisha screamed even louder as the little monster ran, jumping at her. A blanket went over it in the air, and it fell, hitting the floor. Renee wrapped the creature up and tossed it back into the fireplace. She then shut the cage over the opening, trapping it inside. The little demon screamed, an ear-piercing scream as it burned to death. The small creature stared at them as it burned behind the fireplace, still screamed. The girls covered their ears and backed away. Matt and Robert came out of the basement holding guns. Trisha cried, falling to the floor.
What the hell is that?
Robert says, his eyes looking straight at the burning creature's melted red eyes oozing out of its sockets. I don't know. There's a bigger one outside. The window in the mother's room is getting pried open by 2 of the creatures. They drive a crowbar into it, then yank on the end using their small hands. Their red eyes blink as they keep looking in. The window gets broken in the living room by a thrown rock. Just as one leaps inside, it is shot. Matt fires his rifle, blowing holes in its face and body. Then another one crawls in. This one throws a chain at Trisha. The chain goes around her neck and tightens. The creature jumps along the wall and starts walking up it like gravity didn't apply to it. 3 more leaped in, throwing spiked bones shaped like stars at Matt and Robert. Robert fires his gun and misses as he runs into the kitchen. Renee goes back into her room, shutting the door as she held Gwen in her arms. Matt is hit in his shoulder. He fires his rifle, killing dozens of the monsters jumping inside. Most of them crawled up the walls and scattered like a herd of roaches when the lights come on. One of the creatures ran up his back, then wrapped its spiked chain around his throat. Matt dropped his rifle and began fighting for his life as he was being choked out. The spikes punctured his neck, and he began to gag and kick. Robert got up and fired at the creatures, trying to get them off his dad. They all attacked Matt, stabbing him in his torso. They began eating his flesh and digging into his body with their knives and sharp fingernails. Matt reached for his son and told him to run with a mouthful of blood. Matt's head dropped to the floor as the monster choking him out ripped the chain off, pulling out flesh and blood. Robert ran to his mother's room, went inside and slammed the door shut. He turned around and saw that the window was wide open inside. Robert aimed his gun, searching for any movement. Then, just as he saw a small hand come up on the other side of the bed, one of the creatures slid out from under the bed and grabbed his ankle.
Got you, motherfucker!
Robert yelled. The creature opened its mouth, then bit him. The other one climbed on top of his mother's body. It sniffed her, then coughed. It then jumped in the air at Robert. Robert aimed his rifle and fired. The face of the monster exploded. Guts sprayed everywhere. Robert hit the creature on his ankle with the barrel of his rifle. He then picked it up and threw it at the wall. The front door was unblocked now. The creatures unblocked the front door. Trisha was pulled out the front door of the cabin and dragged down the stairs with the chain still around her neck. She kicked her legs and held onto the chain that choked her as she was dragged. The small creature grinned as it walked back to its master. The Krampus stood in the same spot miles away staring at the cabin. Renee put Gwen in the bed and grabbed all the sleeping bags off the floor and used them to cover up Gwen as she still was in a deep sleep. Renee kissed her sister on the forehead, then told her she loves her. Renee then picked up a glass lamp, then ran out the room, shutting the door behind her. The creatures were everywhere, eating parts of her father and laughing. The Christmas tree was tipped over, and blood was splattered all over the walls. One of the creatures climbed up the turned-over couch with her father's genitals in its mouth. It wiggled its head, flinging blood every which way. It then made a wheezing chuckle sound as its red eyes stayed on her. Renee ran swinging at it. The creature leaped up, grabbing hold of the ceiling. The other monsters all turned to Renee with blood-dripping smiles.
Come on, if you want some, come get some,
Renee says, holding up the lamp. The creatures all ran at her. Renee used the lamp, smacking them in the faces and knocking some of them out. She was being stabbed in the process. She broke the lamp on one of their heads. She then picked up her dad's axe, then started chopping at them. The door opens from behind Renee. Her brother walks out, holding one by the scruff of its neck. Its face is smashed in, and one of its eyeballs is hanging out. Robert lifts his rifle up, dropping the corpse, then fires his gun. Outside in the cold, the small creature dragging Trisha to his master is almost there. Trisha's neck has a red ring around it, and it's bleeding. She tries to breathe as she begins to pass out. The numbness of death is cast upon her body, sending her into shock. The little creature is now 19 feet from its master. It takes one more step, then stops. It tugs on the chain, but it doesn't move. It turns around to find Trisha standing up. She is now holding the chain wrapped around her right hand. Krampus looks at her, then at his minion.
Oh no.
Trisha pulls the chain, yanking the small creature on its back. She then runs, dragging the little monster behind her. Its body is knocked around and tossed around like a rag doll as it hits clumps of snow and rocks. Trisha then stops and spins in a circle, sending her attacker in the air. The monster won't let go of the chain. Trisha then sees the tree as she is spinning. Her feet begin to slide in the snow, but she keeps her balance. As soon as she gets to the tree, she swings her hardest, and then, splash. The creature is smashed into an oak tree. Blood streams down it as the body slowly slides down. Trisha takes the chain off from around her neck, then runs back to the cabin. The Krampus finally attacks. It runs straight after Trisha. Trisha falls in the snow, but gets back up quickly. Her heart is racing, and she is freezing. She gets up sliding and stumbling. The cabin door opens up. Robert and his sister step out the cabin covered in guts and blood, holding rifles. The Krampus is gaining on Trisha. It reaches out with its sharp claws. Robert fires his rifle, then so does his sister. Krampus is hit. It falls on its chest, then gets up. It snarls as it roars at Trisha. Trisha screams as she can hear the sounds of its hoofed feet gaining on her. Trisha dropped down, sliding in the snow, and covered her ears. That's when Robert and his sister unloaded. Krampus is blown away, filled with bullets. His body is knocked back and he falls to the ground in a bloody mess. His large body lies in the snow 14 feet from Trisha. Trisha lays in the snow sobbing. She then looks up with tear-filled eyes. Robert tells his sister to stay put, then he goes over to get Trisha.
Stay here. I'm going to get her, okay? Just stay here.
Robert reloads his gun as he steps off the wooden steps of the cabin. The Krampus's right hand moves. Robert takes Trisha's hand, then helps her up. "Let's get out of here," Robert says. The Krampus rises up out of the snow that covered it, with bleeding wounds. Renee aimed her gun, then fired it. She missed, and the Krampus ran at her brother. Renee fired again and missed. The monster ran up to Robert, then snagged him from Trisha's sight. It held Robert in the air, then brought him down, breaking his back on its knee. Robert screamed a blood-curdling scream. Renee ran off the porch in fear of losing her brother. The Krampus looked at Trisha, then smiled at her, whipping out its long tongue. Robert, with the rifle still in hand, tossed it to Trisha.
Kill it! Kill it!
The Krampus lifted Robert in the air, then pulled his body apart, ripping him in half as he was still alive. Trisha went for the rifle just as it happened. She was now showered in her boyfriend's blood. The Krampus tossed both halves to the side and stared at Trisha. Renee cried as she saw her brother being dismembered. She stopped and fired the rifle until she ran out of ammo. Renee ran back into the cabin to get more bullets. The Krampus walked over to Trisha, soaked in Robert's blood. It leaned down, placing one of its hooves on the rifle.
Why do you think this is happening?
Shocked that the beast can talk, Trisha shook her head, sighing. She didn't know why.
Because Santa has a naughty and nice list. He takes the nice, I take the naughty. What list do you think you're on?
Trisha began to beg the horned demon to let her live. It snarled at her, blowing smoke from its nostrils.
What list do you think you're on?
It asked again, stepping closer to her.
The good one.
Trisha says, desperately hoping it will make a difference. The Krampus laughed at Trisha.
You're on the naughty list.
Trisha cried as she pulled on the handle of the rifle.
Trisha, do you know why you're on the naughty list?
No, I never did wrong. I don't lie. I don't treat people badly. I go to church. I believe in God. I'm a good person.
I do too. And even he has a list, and you're still on mine.
The Krampus grabbed Trisha by the neck, then lifted her up in the air.
I'm going to crush your lungs until your head pops.
Just as the Krampus squeezed, Renee got closer, pointing the rifle at the monster's face. The whole half of the Krampus' face is blown off with one shot. One of its horns went flying in the air, landing a couple of meters away. The monster released Trisha, falling to its side. The girls ran back into the cabin, closing the door, then locking it. They both pushed the couch over back in front of the door. Trisha, frightened and frustrated about what put her on the naughty list, kept trembling. Renee slid in the guts of the creatures her and her brother killed.
This is so disgusting.
She made it to her mom's bedroom. She opened the door, then ran over to wake her mother. Peggy would not come out of her deep sleep as her daughter cried, shaking her. Trisha got behind the antique chest that was moved away from the front door by the monsters as they got in. She shoved it back into the front door by leaning on it and using her weight.
My mom. She's just like Gwen. She won't wake up.
Renee says to Trisha as she walks back into the living room. Trisha goes over to the fireplace to warm her hands. She is shivering badly and has snow still in her hair.
Did you hear me? Something is wrong with my mom and my sister. That thing spoke to me. It said, we're on Santa's naughty list. It said that I know why I'm on it.
Trisha tells Renee as she steps over to her.
You're telling me that we're going to die because some fat fuck in a red suit disapproves of our actions? Come on.
Trisha nods her head.
Well, let me see. I think my mom and sister are protected somehow. Maybe if we put them in the same room and get by them, we might be safe. Maybe whatever is protecting them might save us.
Renee says to Trisha as she sits on a dead corpse of one of the monsters.
What if it doesn't work? You seen what that thing did to Robert? What if more of these little creatures come back? Well, the only freaking thing we can do is ask for forgiveness. I know I heard somewhere that through Jesus we can be forgiven, and if that is true, we would be off Santa's naughty list. So, let's pray. I'm just pulling straws here.
Trisha looked at Renee like she was crazy.
Come on, sit by me.
Trisha goes over to Renee, then takes a seat.
You know, I stole, I fucked, I lied and bullied people. What in the hell did you do? I slept with 2 boys. Just different times. I wanted to know how it felt. Like, to be wanted and loved. That's not love, that's lust. And that's not on your part. Boys don't look for love at your age. They look for experience, and after that, they move on to the next pretty girl. I guess you and I should have waited until marriage. Now, a horn-headed, goat-legged freak is after us. Let's get my sister in the room with my mom, then meet back here. Alright?
Outside the cabin, the Krampus got up. Its pointy ears twitched, and its brains licked out one side of its skull as it lifted its head. His face began to transform back as it was. The horn grew back out, and its right eye sprung back in its socket, and soon the monster was whole. The Krampus stood up with its arms hanging down loosely, and then shook its head, knocking off snow. The monster walked past one of the snowmen in front of the cabin, then hit it with its clawed hand, leaving behind 4 sharp, deep grooves in the snowman's face. Trisha and Renee headed back into the living room. They sat in the center of the carpet by the fireplace, then held hands.
I don't know a prayer.
Renee says as she looks at Trisha. Trisha scratched her chin, then says she can do it. Both girls closed their eyes and Trisha spoke.
Dear God in heaven, could you forgive me?
The floorboards burst from between the two of them. The Krampus grabs Renee by the neck, then pulls her down into the basement. Trisha screams, falling backwards, scrambling away from the massive hole. From behind her, one of the many monsters is seen crawling from off the ceiling at her. The Krampus slung Renee into some crates in the basement. Renee got up, then tried to run for the stairs, but was cut off by the monster. Renee spit out blood and balled her fist.
I like you. You have fight.
The Krampus says as it holds out one hand. His claws protruded out, then curved. Trisha stands up, then grabs a rifle. The little creature jumps off the wall onto her back. She then throws the rifle down to Renee. Renee picks it up, but not fast enough. The Krampus drove his sharp nails into Renee's stomach. He then lifted her up and smiled at her. Trisha fell on the love seat as the little demon started scratching her back up with its claws. Trisha screamed and struggled trying to get it off. The Krampus dropped Renee on her stomach. Renee lay on the ground suffering from her wound. Krampus leaned down over her, then pressed one of his clawed hands over her head.
It's time to say goodbye.
Fuck you.
Renee squirmed around, then Krampus applied pressure, smashing her skull until her face exploded with brain matter and blood pushing out. Floppy skin and bone dangled from Krampus's fingers as he rose up, licking his slithery tongue out. Trisha ran, jumping over the love seat, then hitting a wall, breaking the creature's back on a corner. The creature screamed and crawled at her, hissing and growling. Trisha kicked it in the face, then went for the rock that had been thrown through the window earlier. She picked it up, then started bashing the brains out of the small, hideous creature.
Oh no.
You
No!
After she killed it, she stood up shaking with a mixture of Robert's blood and the monster's blood all over her. The Krampus reached up, then grabbed the floor. Its other hand grabbed another part of the floor. It then lifted itself up. Not wanting to see it again, Trisha ran into the bedroom where they put Gwen with her mother. Trisha got into the bed with them, then threw the bedsheet over herself and Gwen and Peggy. The door opened, and the sounds of the hooved monster is heard stepping in. Trisha stared at Gwen's peaceful face as she slept. She wished she was in a deep sleep too. She hated being the only one hearing the awful sounds the Krampus made as it walked from one part of the room to the other. A sharp fingernail slid down the sheets across Trisha's back all the way up to her face. It stopped with the point digging into her cheek. Trisha cried and closed her eyes. The Krampus let up, then placed his drooling mouth over her ear as it is covered by a thin layer of bedcloth.
You are a smart girl, but not smart enough. Let's see how long you can wait.
The Krampus moved away, then left the room. Trisha stayed put. She waited for hours. She talked to Gwen, but Gwen was still under. She pinched Peggy twice and got no response. Hours began to feel like days. The sun never came, and the snow blew harder outside. Trisha fell asleep. She couldn't help it anymore. Her body gave in to the night. Trisha woke up feeling a drift of cold air on her right foot. Her eyes opened up wide. She knew she was uncovered, and her foot was hanging off the bed as she lay in the middle of Gwen and Peggy. Just as she noticed it, a large hairy hand grabbed her ankle. Trisha screamed in horror as she was pulled out from under the covers. Her body hit the floor, and she screamed from the top of her lungs. The Krampus smiled at her as it stood over her, staring down at her with its red eyes. Trisha put her hands together, then started praying. The Krampus began tearing her apart. Its claws ripped off her limbs, and he bit into her face. It pulled out her insides and tossed them aside. Soon after a while, the monster was finished indulging in his kill. Krampus stood up, dripping with Trisha's guts on him. It walked over to Gwen, then smelled her face as she slept peacefully. It then spoke with drool sliding off of its cold lips.
I'll be waiting. Not many people are good for long. Sleep within this silent night, for all is good and all that's right. I will be killing again tonight.
His shadow was on her as he stood up. He looked at the mother, then snarled. He raised his claw hand over Gwen's face. He then heard a jingle in the background somewhere close. Krampus moved away from the girl, wagging his tail and licking the blood from his fingers. He then climbed out the bedroom window and vanished into the snowy night. Left behind were hooved prints in the snow outside the cabin. Gwen woke up. She looked around and saw that the window was open on the right side of her mother's bed. She went over to it, then closed it. She then left the room. She walked into the living room where the fire still burned. The Christmas tree light still flickered on the tall standing tree. The cabin was as it was when they first arrived. The wood floor covered by maroon carpet. The smell of baked cookies from when she helped her mother. Gwen looked around with her tired eyes, seeing nothing out of place. She then rubbed her eyes. Gwen went to her bedroom, then noticed 2 empty sleeping bags on the floor. She yawned, then got into her bed. She looked under the covers for her dolly and found her. She then pulled the blanket over her body, then stared out the window at the snow, and she fell back to sleep as the time turned to 11:46 p.m.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace.